What's up, 7th graders? This is Mrs. Talati here representing Mrs. Servati. Just me today, okay? So I'll be covering the 1.2 adding integers with different signs part 2. Please make sure that you are on the correct note taker based on the definitions that you see in the key terms. Your essential understanding for today is I can add integers with different signs. Now, like I just said, in the key terms, this is your time because your note taker only says sum, zero pairs, and additive inverse. So you may want to pause the video and write down these definitions before you hear me go through the examples so that you can make sure they're written down and then you pay attention to the examples. So sum, and this is something you guys should have learned a long time ago, is the result when two or more numbers are added. And what I need you to understand is that doesn't change when you're having positive and negative numbers, right? Meaning if I have a positive 2 plus 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. If both my numbers are negative, it's still going to be a sum. And it's even true when one is a negative and one is a positive. Okay? So please make sure that you understand that the sum is just the answer to an added problem or an addition problem. Zero pairs you guys have heard and we've talked a lot about over the course of the last couple days. It's when you add a positive integer. Remember, our positives are our yellows or our R's or our Y's or our pluses or whatever it is you want to call it. And then we have a red to that. Together we have a cancel out known as a zero pair that is equal to 0. And then the additive inverse is the opposite of a number. So if I have on a number line, let's say I have the number 3, the opposite of 3 is a negative 3. You guys can also see that they have the same number of spaces away from 0. So every positive has an opposite of a negative and every negative has an opposite of a positive. So let's get into solving. So today we are not using number lines or chips. What we are doing is using the rules in which we add integers with different signs. So if you guys see, we have a little table up here and it says you're going to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. Use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value for the sum. Okay, so I'm going to rearrange this a little bit. If you guys think to yourself right now, going back to the chips, we're not going to put them on the board. For the negative 11, you would have 11 reds, right? And for the 6, you would have 6 yellows. So the bigger group, so I'm going to rewrite this in maybe a different kid-friendly language. So when there are different signs, let's just go down here. You're going to subtract the absolute values and take the sign of larger group. And the reason we're going to say larger group, because again, in your head you can think, all right, I have 11 reds and I have 6 yellows. My bigger group is my 11. Okay, so let's tie this back to the absolute value. If I have a negative 11 and a positive 6, the absolute value is 11. Of a negative 11 is 11. The absolute value of 6 is 6. If I subtract those two numbers, I get 5. Now, because my bigger group of chips will be a negative, my final answer is a negative. So when you're adding integers with different signs, you actually subtract the absolute values and then take the sign of the larger group. Okay? Well, if you look down below, both of our groups, we have 37 reds and 37 yellows. This is where the additive inverse comes into play. This is the opposites, right? So the opposite of a negative 37 is a positive 37, so my answer is 0. All right, and we're going to be practicing adding with different signs a lot. We have to also be able to apply it to the real-world application. So here is a word problem. Don't be afraid. Again, it's going to be dealing with integers. So we have Bart and Sam played a game in which each player earns or loses points in each turn. A player's total score after 2 turns is the sum, which means we are going to add, of his points earned or lost. Okay? Earned is going to be plus and lost is going to be negative. The player with the greater score after 2 turns wins. Bart, so we have our 2 players. I have Bart and I have Sam. Okay? The first thing we have to do is write their math problems. So if we look at Bart, Bart earned 123 points. Well, 123 is a positive number, right? We go back to the idea that we are adding integers because it said the sum of the two terms. And then he lost 180 points. So loss is in negative. Okay, so there's my math problem for Bart. Take a look at Sam. And Sam earned, so earned is a positive. We are adding the two terms. And lost, so we have earned 185 and lost 255. So the loss is a 255. Right? So we have our math problems. Now look, we are adding integers with different signs. One's a positive and one's a negative. So if we end up taking the absolute values, we have 123 and 180. Now if you go back to the definition, it says take the one with the lesser absolute value and subtract it with the one with the greater. So ultimately I'm going to subtract and I get 57. Well, if I think about it in terms of chips, I have 123 yellow and I have 180 red. So my larger group is a negative 57. Okay, so Bart's score is negative 57. Now let's see what Sam's score is. Sam, the absolute value of 185. And then we have the absolute value of negative 255. Sorry, I didn't mean to use a parenthesis end right there. So I'm going to take the absolute values and I'm going to subtract the lesser, which is the 185, from the greater, which is 255. Borrow here, and here I get 70. Again, I'm going to go back to chips. I have 185 yellows and I have 255 reds. Reds are bigger. So I have a negative 70. Now here's where we have to understand. It says which person won the game. We got to think in terms of negative. So the closer a number is to 0 on the number line, the bigger it is. So if you guys think about it, we can just sketch a quick number line. If this is our 0 and we go 1, 2, and so on and so forth, we're going to have a negative 57 before we have a negative 70. So the winner of the game is actually going to be Bart. Winner. That's supposed to be say winner. Oh, and then I just threw my pen in the trash can. Cervantes, this is when I miss you, because I'm in here talking to myself. There we go. Winner. Okay, so Bart was the winner. Now, you guys get to practice this on your own, remember? So you can use the chips and the number lines anytime you want, but what we don't want you guys doing is spending your time, down here drawing 32 yellows, right? You want to think about them in your head and then identify. So subtract the absolute values, take the sign of the bigger group. Okay, and that's going to be something that we get in practice. And then you have 2 word problems that you must write the math problem and solve it. And that's it for today. You guys have a great day. Make sure this gets done for class tomorrow. Bye.